Dustin Hoffman spoke up, but it wasn't a moving eulogy or a beautiful tribute to an old friend. Instead, it was a bitter statement. It was too late. He had been quiet for too long. Gene Hackman was gone, leaving behind all the secrets, misunderstandings, and fights that could never be fixed. During their hard times in New York and their times of fame in Hollywood, their lives crossed paths, but they never really stood next to each other. Friendship, a rivalry, or just two people who were stuck in a terrible job where they couldn't show their feelings. Now that it was all over, Hoffman told the truth, which may have shocked everyone. Part 1. The Quiet Before the Storm. Two names that used to be very important in Hollywood, Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman. They were acting legends that everyone in the business had to respect. But for decades, there was a truth that couldn't be changed. Hoffman didn't talk about Hackman very often. They both came from the same place and had hard times when they first started out in the entertainment business. Now that they were both at the top of Hollywood, there was always something missing between them. The silence was so long that it became a secret. He might talk about stars like Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Jack Nicholson, or even actors younger than him, like Leonardo DiCaprio. But Gene Hackman didn't talk about Hollywood very often. There are stories that haven't been told yet, and gossip can spread faster than the truth. And Hoffman's silence about Hackman for a long time led to many ideas. Were they at odds with each other? Or did they stop talking to each other a long time ago? Were the two ex-friends secretly competing with each other? No one ever told the answer. Even when Hackman quit acting in 2004 and disappeared from Hollywood to live a quiet life, Hoffman didn't say a word. There was not a single word of praise, an emotional status, or an interview that mentioned Gene Hackman's name. A lot of reporters tried to find out. Hoffman always avoided being asked. He could talk for hours about how Rain Man or The Graduate were filmed, but as soon as Hackman came up, he just smiled and changed the topic, a strange response that everyone saw. Hackman, what about him? He also never talked about Hoffman. That wasn't too strange with Hackman, though. He liked to keep to himself and didn't like the attention of Hollywood. People like Hoffman, who was friendly and always had something to say, found that silence very strange. Hackman was in the comedy Welcome to Mooseport in 2004, but it didn't do very well. That wasn't what anyone thought would be his last movie role. There was no official news of retirement, no big press conference, and no moving speech to the crowd. Hackman just left. He left Hollywood one day and never came back. Arakawa went to Santa Fe, New Mexico, with his wife to live a simple life. That's all anyone knew about him. Sometimes a few camera pictures of Hackman riding a bike or shopping would show up in the newspaper. Fans were always asking, how is Gene Hackman now? But he didn't answer. Also, Dustin Hoffman never talked about him. Years went by, the quiet didn't end. Over time, people came to terms with the idea that maybe they were just two old coworkers who hadn't been in touch in a while. Then the world was shocked by the news about Gene Hackman. Hollywood was shook up. A lot of honors came in from all over the world. Many actors who had worked with Hackman, including Clint Eastwood, Robert Duvall, and Barbra Streisand, said nice things about him. He was talked about by everyone. Dustin Hoffman was the only one who didn't say anything. In the beginning, his quiet made people wonder more. What would he say? Do you think he would keep quiet like he has for years? He finally spoke up after all. Some honors were like Hoffman's, but not all of them. There were no pleasant memories or signs of respect in it. There were no stories of love or friendship. Instead, it was an admission of guilt. I should have reached out. I needed to call him. I didn't. It's too late now. That was a short comment, but it was enough to shut Hollywood up. It was true, Dustin Hoffman said, that there was something between them. He always tried to avoid, and it was something he should have taken care of a long time ago. It was too late now. No one is sure what happened between them. It was clear, though, that it wasn't just time or being busy. Deep down, it was a wound that never got better. It was too late for Dustin Hoffman to change anything after he spoke up. Over the years, his silence said it all. Part 2.1, that is based on competition. If someone had seen Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman when they were just starting out, they would have no idea that their relationship would get so complicated over time. Because before they were famous Hollywood stars, they were close friends who went through hard times together and shared struggles. They also had artistic dreams, but no one knew their names. But They stopped being friends after a while. Over time, differences in how they saw their careers and maybe both of their big egos pushed them to opposing sides. And after Gene Hackman left Hollywood, Dustin Hoffman didn't say anything about his old friend for decades. He finally did say something when it was too late. It's the 1950s in New York. As young guys, both Hoffman and Hackman were driven and wanted to be great actors. At the time, Pasadena Playhouse was one of the best places to learn how to play, and that's where they met. They both didn't have a good place to start. There was no money or power in the family or in the business. Hoffman was often taken for granted because he was small and didn't have the typical Hollywood good looks. Some say that teachers at the Pasadena Playhouse told him straight out that he wasn't good enough to be a major actor. Gene Hackman, on the other hand, quickly stood out with his strong body, tough personality, and all-American face. Still, they became friends and went through hard times together. They rented a small room together, did odd jobs to make ends meet, and always told each other that they would make it one day. But then, their jobs went in different directions. Hackman got his first big jobs in the early 1960s. He showed his skills right away and quickly became one of the most sought-after actors. His big break came in 1967 with Bonnie and Clyde, which not only got him an Oscar nod, but also made him one of Hollywood's best actors. Hoffman, meanwhile, was still having trouble with small parts and couldn't get a grip. Hackman had already started to enjoy the attention while he was still waiting for his chance. That could have been the first time they started to feel the gap between them. No longer two friends walking together on a rough road, but one who had already reached the goal and the other who was still racing. Hoffman finally got his chance with The Graduate in 1967. He became one of Hollywood's most famous faces when he played Benjamin Braddock, which put him on the map and won him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. But something had changed between Hoffman and Hackman even when he caught up with him. Once they were both well known, people noticed that Hoffman and Hackman rarely showed up together, even though they were close. There were no funny stories from behind the scenes, and no nice things said about each other in the news. There was just a strange distance. There were rumors that Hoffman and Hackman had problems when they were both trying to get big parts. They were both strong actors who wanted to play iconic parts, which may have made them rivals in a way that wasn't said. Someone in the business world once said they were friends, but they were also competitors. And in Hollywood, rivalry can change bonds into something else. Hoffman often chose complicated parts that needed psychological depth because of his funny personality and flexible acting style. On the other hand, Hackman was the epitome of power and practicality. He always had a decisive energy on screen. Because of that difference, they were two very different kinds of characters, and the reason they might not have become close again. There was no formal word that the two had broken up, but their silence was the best proof. Hoffman knew a lot about all of his co-workers, from Meryl Streep to Robert De Niro, but in no way Hackman. Hackman doesn't talk to the reporters very often, and he never brought up Hoffman either. After Gene Hackman died, Dustin Hoffman finally spoke out, but he said, "I should have reached out," instead of the emotional tribute that many were expecting. Not a single story about happy memories or praise for Hackman's work, just a short statement to admit that they had a problem with each other that was never fixed. All the stories that have been going around for a long time now seem to have an end. Both Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman were famous actors, but they were also people. They were also old friends who used to be on the same side, but got caught up in the fast-paced worlds of fame, work, and choices that could not be changed. When one finally left, the other one understood there were things they should have said sooner. Now, though, it was all over. Part 3, I should have reached out. Dustin Hoffman's sad admittance. Dustin Hoffman's last words about Gene Hackman were not a moving tribute or a lovely list of memories of a great coworker. Rather, it was just a simple line that was sad. I should have reached out. Even though they were only 5 words, they hit home with people who had followed the story of these two men, who were legends, old friends, and strangers in their later years. He wasn't the type to talk about private things in public. He had a sense of fun. He might be smart, but he rarely showed how he really felt. No one knew what to expect when he met with our reporters to talk about Hackman. It was a simple question. Do you want to say anything about Gene Hackman? She took a deep breath. His eyes were far away, as if he were trying to remember something that had been buried for too long.